Yeah, good morning, everyone. I guess this morning's learning should be as close to Shalema. So again, what was the name, Alan? Meir Dov HaKohen Ben Yenta. So the full Shalema. All right. I think I know where we got up to yesterday. My dad kind of gave me like an area that we got to the point where the Gemara, the Mishnah mentions. So this is the Mishnah on Pei Beis and Beis. The Mishnah we are today going to Amir Sashan do Daf Pei Gimel. We will conclude the Parak Hasochar Sa'omnin and then start Hasochar Sa'polim. But the very last Mishnah on Hasochar Sa'omnin on Daf Pei Beis Amud Beis talks about a person who shomer of sorts, right? We've seen the Gemara. It's a little maybe unclear exactly what type of shomer, but the shomer moves this chavis that was in his custody. He moves it from place to place and it breaks. And the question is, what exactly, what do you do about this? And the Tana Kama of the Mishnah said that regardless of whether it was a shomer chinam, whether it was a shomer sachar, all you have to do is take a shua shomrim, and that's all you have to do. And Reb Eliezer, but the Girsa I think is Reb Elazar, he says basically I don't disagree with that, but I just don't really understand it. And the first Gemara that I think that we did yesterday, or that my dad did yesterday, was the Gemara would basically say this seems like a stira in Rav Meir, right? On the one hand, from the fact that he's telling you that a shomer chinam can get out of being chayev by just taking a shvua. It sounds like niskal is lav poshea. That's why he can take a shvua that he wasn't a poshea and he could be okay. But in this very difficult sugyas in Parak HaManiach, in the third parak of Baba Kama, we saw there were sugyas, and it was in the context of bar and those types of contexts, where Rav Meir clearly held that niskal was a poshea. And when the first answer, we'll see a second answer today, where the first answer that the Gemara gave was, you're right, it seems like taver, right? Misha shanazu, lo shanazu. It seems like a stira. And I think that's where we got up to. So I'll start from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it's the last word and the sixth to last word on the line. But going with that, we're just going to kind of explain the rest of the brisa, right? So the brisa had three shitas. We had shitas from Meir, who said whether you're a shomer chinam or a shomer sachar, you swear and then you pater. We had shitas from Yehuda that said there's a difference whether you're a shomer chinam or a shomer sachar. A shomer chinam, you would just swear that you were in a poshea, and that's it. And then you're fine if you broke this chavis. Shomer sachar has a higher degree of shmira me'ula associated with it, and therefore, if you were shomer sachar, you can't just swear and get out of this. And then we had the third sheet of Rebbe Elazar who said, listen, the halacha goes like Rav Meir, that's our Masorah, but yet I don't really understand it. So again, last one on the line, 6 lines up, Pei Beis Amud Beis. So va'asa Rabbi Yehuda lemeimar that shomer chinam yishav anosei sachar yishalem hai kedinei, like we just explained. Shomer chinam has a shmira pechusa, and therefore, as long as he can swear if he wasn't a poshea, he's fine. A shomer sachar can't do that, and therefore a shomer sachar might be chayav. Last Rebbe Elazar, again the gears probably Rebbe Elazar lemeimar in Gemara Rav Meir. The halacha does go like Rav Meir. That's certainly the Masorah. I don't understand how both a shomer chinam and a shomer sachar can swear and just get out of it. Bishlam a shomer chinam mishtaba lo pasha, but maybe a shomer chinam can swear that he wasn't a poshea. That's all a shomer chinam really needs to be able to say. El shomer sachar amai mishtaba. What does he even swear? Kilo pasha nami shlumi bai. Right? Even if he wasn't a poshea, he's still chayav neva v'aveda. This sort of thing wouldn't be a geneva, but presumably it would be in the category of something like an aveda, even if it wasn't necessarily a poshea, but clearly he broke it, needed to be more careful. So exactly, Rabbi Elazar is saying, I don't even understand how can a shomer sachar just make a shvua and get out of it. And then he says, "Mafilu shomer chinam nami," and even a shomer chinam. I can understand if there was like a slope. So, all right, you can understand why a guy would trip while he's holding a heavy chavis. But midrin, mi matzi mishra. But let's say it was a regular thing. How does he even swear that it wasn't a poshea? Of course it was a poshea. How else did this thing travel? Right? Mi matzi mishra pasha. And then he says, va'afilu b'makom midron. And even if you want to tell me that we are in a slope, nami hatenachedleka raya. Raya, Nasi, Raya, and Nifter. So now we're going to say we're going to talk about a big chiddush that we'll see in a brisa. But he says By the way, a little chiddush in Shomer Chinam. We normally say that a Shomer Chinam takes a shvua, that it wasn't a posheya, and then he's off the hook. But as we'll see in a moment, Isi ben Yehuda said that it's not that simple. That just because you're a Shomer Chinam, you first have to do a little bit of due diligence to see, are there people that would have seen what actually happened? Once you've determined that there are no people that have seen what could have happened, then you rely on the Shomer's shvua. But before then, you have to see if there's a raya or not. Tanya, we learned in a Bryce Isi ben Yehuda Omer, the pasuk says, and this is the pasuk in Shomer Chinam, right? The pasuk says, "Kite nishma reu shamaro chamaro sev chol behemel shmar umeso nishbar nishba ein roeh." That's the last word of the pasuk, and then the next words are the next pasuk. Shvuas Hashem tia bein shneim. So there's a connection between ein roeh and then they take a shvua. So again, Titania, Yisib and Yehuda Omer ein roeh. Shvuas Hashem tia bein shneim. Again, it's two different pasukim. Ein roeh is the last two words of one pasuk, and then Shvuas Hashem tia bein shneim. Ha yesh roeh. But if there are those that may have seen what happened, so yavi raya yipter, then you can't just take a shvua. Then you gotta speak to the people that would have seen and see what they know. Well, exactly. But the point is, you don't even have to necessarily know for a fact that there were eight. The point is, Bezdin is, that's the way I think Rashi says it. Bezdin has to do a little bit of due diligence first to make sure that there's no one. And actually, we'll see a few stories as is illustrated in the Gemara. That again, clearly, if there's Eidim, then we're not going to rely on the Shmuel. But the point is, even if we don't know there are Eidim, we have to at least find out. If we see that if it's a public place, we got to make sure there were no Eidim. Yeah,
he's making a shvua that he wasn't portrayed.
Exactly. But the point is, if there were agents that could have seen, right nowadays, cameras everywhere, there's ring cameras, right? You got to check the footage. You don't just rely on a guy taking a shua. So again, answer number one. We started the Mishnah. We kind of had a bit of a stira. This is really yesterday's daf. But the stira was in Shitas Rav Meir, is a niskal poshea or a lav poshea. And the first answer the Gemara gave, again, this is yesterday's daf, was it's a stira. The people who learned that Rav Meir says niskal lav poshea, they cannot work with the people that say Rav Meir says niskal is a poshea. The Bryce over here and the Mishnah and Hamaniach, you can't really make them fit together. The second answer the Gemara is about to give is Rav Chia bar Abba or Rav Yochanan. He said no. Really, I'll tell you that Rav Meir holds that niskal.
Where are you holding? Where are you holding?
We're a few lines down on Pei Gimel Amid Aleph. You see where the Gemara says Rav Chia bar Abba? Was it 5 lines down, maybe?
Okay.
So this is another answer to. This is another answer to answer the stira under Rav Meir.
Yes.
So Rav Chia bar Abba Amar Rav Yochanan, he says Shvua Zut Kanas Chachamim. Really, Rav Meir will tell you that niskal is a poshea, and that's why in the sugyas of Hamaniach, where a person's camel falls down, or a person breaks his shards, he really does have to pick everything up because he would be responsible. But here, when you're a shomer chinam, it's a different ballgame, and the shvua is really done as a takanus chachamim to really help out the shomer. Shein iyata omer ken. If you're not going to let the shomer make the shvua and then get out of it, ein lecha adam maver chavas chaver makom lemakom. No one's ever going to want to be a shomer chinam. Imagine if you're a shomer chinam and you know that, listen, I said I would wash your thing in my house. I don't want to leave it there for the next 3 weeks. I want to be able to move it around if it's convenient. But if I know that if I move it around and something happens, I'm not responsible, even if I wasn't a poshea, right? Like I just moved it around and something happened. So then I'm not going to want to be a shomer. Therefore, the Rabbanan were misaking this ability for a shomer chinam to make a shvua to get out of it. But in a chanami, Rav Meir really does hold that niskal is a poshea. It's just this is a special. It's going to come in to help out the shomer chinams of the world. So hechi mishtaba, and what exactly is this shvua? Right, if niskal is a poshea, and you were niskal, so you can't make a shvua that you weren't a poshea. So what's the shvua? So Amarava shvua lo b'kavana shavartiya. You really make a shvua, not even that you weren't a poshea. You just make a shvua that you didn't purposely break this guy's thing. That presumably you can make. Okay. Well, Asra Yehuda lemeimar. Now we'll just redo a lot of the lines that we said. Right. Once we have that understanding of Rav Meir, now we'll want to understand Rav Yehuda and Rav Elazar. Svas Rav Yehuda lemeimar shemachinam yishava nosi sachar yishalim hay kedinei v'hay kedinei. Again, shemachinam has a lower form of shmir than a shomer sachar. V'asher Elazar lemeimar in Gemara Rav Meir miu to miu ani imichon zevazel shava. Even though the halacha does go like Rav Meir, I don't really understand it. I'm not really sure why we allow these guys to take a shvua. Mishtaba Shlo Pasha. Maybe Bishlam and the Shmachinim can make a Shavua that he wasn't a Poshea. Ela Shomer Sachar, my Mishtaba. Kilo Pasha Nami by Yishlamir. Kilo Shomer Chinam Nami. Ha Tenach Vakam Midron. I can understand if it's a slope. Shlom Vakam Midron. Me, Matzi, Mishtaba. How do I take a Shavua that if it wasn't in a slope, that it wasn't a Poshea? Of course I was a Poshea, right? Me, Matzi, Mishtaba Shlo Pasha. And then he says, Vakilo Vakam Midron. And even you're going to tell me that there is a slope. Shalom Vakam Midron. Me, Matzi, Mishtaba. Sorry, I skipped a line. Like a raya, that's maybe if people weren't around, but hechadika raya, where people could have been around and people could have seen. Nicey raya be potter the time. You have this price which is quoted above. Easy ben Yuda Omer, Ain ro at Shvuas Hashem Tia Bain Shneim Yesh Roa Yavi Raya Vi Pater. Period. And now the Gemara is going to bring two different stories that illustrate this idea of Isi ben Yuda. Isi ben Yuda's finish was that when you have a shomer chinam, or I guess a shomer suffer, you don't just let, because all the shomer, when they get out of it, they have to take a shvuah. You don't just let them take a shvuah. You have to do a little bit of due diligence to make sure that people weren't around to have seen what happens. Once you determine that people didn't see what happens, now you can rely on the shomer. So here's the story. Ahu Gabra, Davaka Ma'abar Chavisa de Chamra, Beristika de Mechuza, Bitaber, Beziza de Mechuza. So there was a person, he was probably a shomer of sorts, and he has this big barrel, and he's in this big marketplace in Mechuza, and he's moving it from point A to point B, and he breaks on some beam in this marketplace in Mechuza. So Askamei, the Rava, they come to Rava and Amarle. What does Rava say? He says, Ristika de Mechuza, Shchi Benchi. I mean, this is like the shuk, right? There's people around. So Zil, I see Raya. Don't just take a shvua that you weren't Poshea. You got to talk to the people, look at the footage, right? Look at the tapes, and you got to prove your innocence. You can't just take a shvua in this case. So Amalei Rabbi Yosef Bray, Rabbi Yosef, who was Rabba's son, says to his father, "Come on, Kiisi, are you pasking like Isi? Amalei in Kiisi Usir Lakavase. We do paskin like Isi, and that's how I'm pasking over here." So another story, Ahu Gavra, similar story. The Amalei Lechabre, once a man, he said to his his shliach or whatever, says to his friend, Zil Zavan the Arba Mea Dani Chamra. Go please buy for me 400 barrels of wine. Presumably it was a lot of money. So Azal Zavan lay. So he went and he bought these things. And Lesof Asal Kameh and Amr lay. So now the shliach comes back to the Mishalech, or the principal, and Amr lay says, Vina Lach Arba Mea Dani Chamra. I bought you your barrels of wine. It's Kifu Lu, and they all went bad. They're all vinegar. So now this principal gets a little suspicious, and he's like, listen, it's a lot cheaper by vinegar than wine, right? So I'll tell you what this guy did. He bought 400 barrels of vinegar, pocketed the money, right? And he's giving you saying, sorry, it's your loss. So Asmak made the Rava. So they come in front of Rava, and Amar Lay, and Rava says, Arba Mea Dani Chamra Takifi. If you're telling me that 400 good barrels of wine went bad, Kala Isle Lamilsa, I mean, that would be a pretty big deal. People would have heard such a thing. So Zil I say Raya, the Meikaraki Mizabnis Chamra Ma'al Yahaba, the Apatar. Presumably, when you bought 400 barrels of wine, you did some sort of, you wanted to make sure they were good. You wanted to get some sort of warranty, whatever it is. So go bring a Raya, go speak to the people that were involved when you were doing this transaction and prove your case that this was at one point when you bought it, it was 400 barrels of wine. And so he kind of, again, gave a very similar stock to the last one. He said there probably are people around. There's probably a way to bring a raya. We're not just relying on your shua. Go bring a raya. So Amalei Rabbi Yosef, again, Rabbi Yosef, Rabba's son, said, "Come on, Isi, are you passing like Isi? Amalei in ki Isi usirlan kavasei." Just as an FYI, why would the Gemara bring another story that's essentially identical to the first story? Because this second story was not involving Shomrim. Isi ben Yehuda's chiddush was specifically with respect to Shomrim because of the psukim that are in the parsha of Shomrim. Rava kind of extrapolated this idea to another area where normally a person could take a shvuah and be pater. And again, Rava said, based on the same theory, that no, we're only going to rely on your shvuah if we can't find better, Adim or something along those lines. But if we can expect that you really should have something stronger to support your claim than just your shvuah, we would force you to do that. Okay. Iskin Rav Chia Bar Yosef the Sikra. Hani Didari Ba'agra. So Rav Chia, I guess, made some sort of takana. So again, I don't really know the thing over here, but the point is you have movers and you have a load that is too heavy for one person, not quite heavy enough for two people. And I guess the way this yoke that they would use, it wouldn't really make sense. So the guy tried to just do it on his own. and he broke it. He broke it. Nishalim palgal. We only make him pay half. My time. Nafish lachad. Bezutra latre. So therefore, his carvel under the carvel of Shia. Can't really expect him to use two because it wasn't heavy enough to require to. On the other hand, it was kind of heavier than he could have done. He took a chance and he was wrong and he broke this thing. So we do make him pay, but we're not going to make him pay the whole thing. We're only going to make him pay half. But bedigla, mishalim kula. But let's say this was something that was heavy enough for two people and he required this double yoke, which again, I'm sure it made more sense. I'm sure you have to be there. But if you have a load, if you're a mover and they should have known that they could not move this thing on their own, they needed help, but they did it on their own and they broke it, then already you're mishalim kula. Rabba Bar Chanan, last story for the end of the parak. Taberle, he said, Hanu Shkule Chavisa Dechamra. He once hired these people. They were going to move his chavis or whatever it is. He hired these, day laborers, and they broke it, unfortunately. And they didn't have any money to pay him. We'll soon see these guys did not have a lot of money. So he wanted to get something from them. So Shakal Liglimayu, he literally took the shirts off their back, right, as payment for whatever they owed him. So Asu Amru Rav. So they go to Rav and they say, this really isn't right. He stole our shirts. He didn't really steal our shirts, but he took our shirts. So Amr Le, so Rav said to Rav of Bar Chanan, Hav Luhu Glimayu, give them their shirts back. So Amr Le, so Rav of Bar Chanan said to Rav, Dinahachi is really the din so that I can't keep, it's not even collateral. I think this is his way of getting his money back, of taking their clothes. So Amr Le because the pasuk in Mishlei says Laman Telech Derech Tovim, and the end of the pasuk is Va'archos Sadikim Tishmar. Rashi says this is Rav's way of saying sometimes the din is you have to go Lefnim Mishur Sadin. So maybe it's not black letter law that you're supposed to do this, but these are people that obviously don't have any money. They need their clothes. You got to give them their clothes back. I guess they sensed that this was a good, Rav was kind of on their side. So these workers said, Amrule Aniye Anan. We don't have a lot. Tzarchinan Kuliyoma. And we were working all day. The kafina and the Leslan Midi, and he obviously didn't pay us, right? Because we broke his thing, took our shirts, right? So we don't have any. We worked all day. We don't have anything to show for it. We're hungry. We need food. So Amar Le. So Rav said again to Rav Bar Chanan, Zil have Igrayu. Go pay them. Amar Le. Dina, I gotta pay them. And they broke my thing, right? Again, Amar Le in Va'archos Sadikim Tishmar, which is really the end of that pasuk in Mishlei. Again, this idea that it's important to sometimes ask if Nimr shirts are in. And therefore, not only can you not take their shirts, we should pay them as well. Mazel tov, Hadramalach, Asocher, Es Ha. I was telling whoever was here right when we started, we are about to kick off some epic Agadata. I guess Yoel didn't make his cheshbon properly, so we're going to do Agadata, through the time that Yoel gets back. But we start with a little bit of Metzia Gemara, and then we and then we are going to take off on a 4 or 5 day digression. I only went through tomorrow, and it's tomorrow's stop. Come for tomorrow's stop. A little plug. It's a wild one. But okay, so far it's a Poland. You hire day laborers. So the paragraph we just finished was so far so Poland. These are more like people that are doing a job for you or whatever it is, or artisans, whatever it is. This is more day laborers, right? Now clearly, when you hire them, you can stipulate whatever you want. You want them to come at 7 a.m, stay 7 o'clock at night, whatever you're agreeing to pay them. What if you don't stipulate anything? Like, what's the default when it comes to Poland? That's what this mission is about. So Poland, but Amr Lahem, after you basically said you're going to come for this much money, but Amr Lahem, come really early in the morning, stay really late at night. If the minhag makom is 9 to 5. So in a Rosh Hashanah, you can't force them to come at 7, right? If they're paid for the day, exactly, they're paid for the day. Exactly, yeah. So you're paying. You say, I'm gonna $100, and you're gonna come over to my house and schlep. So can the assumption be 9 to 5? Can you call them up after they agreed and say, by the way, so it's 7 to 9 o'clock at night? Right? 7 to 9 o'clock. What are you talking about? Like, absolutely not, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about. So it's makam shenagu shlola ashkim shlola arb ein Rosh Hashanah. Makam shenagu lazun. If the minhag makam is you give them lunch, yazun, you gotta feed them. The sape b'mitika. Rashi says this means lift them, which I think the Arsenal says is like relish. Like in my mind, it's like a Chicago hot dog style or something like that. But the point is, wherever the minhag of the makam is, you stop it, right? If you give him lunch, you got to give him a break, you got to give him whatever it is. That's what you got to do. Now, again, you can stipulate around this, but that's before they get started. You can't, once they're on the job, you can't start now. You got to stick with minhag hamakom. Hakol k'minhag haMedina. So Ma'aseh, this actually was a story that came up not that long ago in Bava Metzia. So Ma'aseh Rabbi Yochanan ben Maskeh she'amar lebno. This person, he said to his son, say, go get us some day laborers, and I guess in order to entice them a little bit, he said, we'll provide lunch. When he told his father what he did, that he offered these guys lunch, Amar Lo, he said, B'ni, even if we were going to give them a fantastic catered lunch, these are Jewish people, and they're going to expect so much, right? So what did you do? Right? Why did you offer that? Ella, actually, rather, before they start actually working, say, be very clear about what it is that we plan to provide. Because if you just say lunch can mean anything. It can mean a big catered kiddush or something like that, right? So let's be very clear that what we mean is we're going to provide lunch, but very much the basics. Rav Shimon Gamliel said, none of that was really necessary. Because the reality is, even if you said lunch means what typically an employer would provide, a day laborer employee, whatever that is. That's what lunch means. It does not mean, a carving station. Okay. The Gemara says, what was the first halacha of the Mishnah? That assuming you don't stipulate differently, if you tell someone you got to be by my house tomorrow for a fixed price, whatever the price is, the assumption is 9 to 5. The assumption is you can't tell them you got to come at 7 in the morning and stay till 9 o'clock at night. The Gemara says, pshita. Like, why would I even think anything else? Let's say the going rate for a day laborer is $80, and I say, $100, 110. So you maybe have a havamina that implicit is it's a longer day, right? The fact that I'm giving you more than the regular wages, it's because you're going to come earlier and stay later. They can say to him, hi, the tapaslan. No, I thought you just wanted us to actually work hard. $80, you only get this much effort. $100, now I'm going to give you a lot of effort, but I'm only going to give you the effort from 9 to 5. Right? So that's a valid claim, and therefore, even if you give them more than the going rate, you still can't just take it for granted that they would come earlier or stay later. Amar Reish Lakish says, Poel b'chnisaso mishalo and b'yetziyaso mishal balabai. So it's a little bit like backwards the way we kind of typically nowadays. A lot of us don't live in the city, but we work in the city. In those days, right? People lived in the city and needed to work in the fields. So it's b'chnisaso when you're entering the city, meaning at the end of the day, mishalo, your commute is on your dime. But b'yetziyaso in the morning when you're leaving the city, going to work, Mishal balabayis, your commute is on the balabayis time, which is a way of saying, he's going to prove it from a pasuk, which is a way of saying that let's say the work day in theory would be something like sunrise to sunset, let's just say. So sunrise is when you leave your house to get to the fields. You get to the fields a half hour in. But at the end of the day, you have to wait for sunset, whatever the end of the day is, and that's when you leave the job site. So your commute going to work can be on the balabayis time, but your commute coming home, that's on your own dime. That's after the workday ends. Nowadays,
actually, it's not even going. Start at the first job, and your day ends at the last job.
Yeah. Well, the Gemara is even going to say, like, what are you talking about? This is all minhag haMedina. What are you talking about? But either way, so how does he prove this? From Psukim that we're familiar with from Barchi Nafshi. The pasuk says, Tizrach Hashem Seifun, like people gather when the sun comes up, meaning you're not at the job site already, you're only gathering when the sun comes up. The elbow onasim your batsun and yetzi adam lefalo ula'avoda so ade arv. And it sounds like when the day is over, that's when you leave your office. So the Gemara says, kind of like what Abrami was saying, like, what are we even talking about? Like, why don't we just see what people do? Like, we just finished saying everything is a kol k'minhag haMedina. So the Gemara says, "Be'ir chadasha." It's a new city, so they don't really have a set thing. This is a new city. Why don't we just see where they all came from, right? See whatever the minhag was over there. So binekutai, this is a melting pot of people that are coming from different places. New community. We don't have any previous minhag haMakom. Vayasema the Amrluhu the Agrisuli Kapol de Arais. Imagine these are very frum people, and they said, I want the Torah to really, I want the Torah to control our employment arrangement. So what does the Torah say about when I have to get to work and when I don't have to come to work? And that's when you can look at this pasuk and Baruch Nafshi and say that's what the Torah has to say about it. Okay. Darash Rab Zera, and now we are about to kick off a full-on, 3, 4, 5 day Agadata. So let's do it. Darash Rab Zera, but Amrila, we were going on these psukim of Baruch Nafshi, but Amrila Tani Rab Yosef, my dechsiv. Tashas Choshech Vihilaila, both Sirmos Kolchaise Yar. So Hashem creates the night, darkness, the night, and in it all of the forest animals. That's where they stir, I believe is the word. Tashas Choshech Vihilaila, Zeh darkness. That's Olamazeh. Shadom Laila, and both Sirmos Kolchaise Yar. What does it mean that in it all the animals, the forest animals, stir? Elu Rishayim Shabo. These are the Rishayim in this world. Shadom and the Chaya Shabiyar. Tizrach Hashemesh safe when the sun comes out. Elbow Nasan here Batsun. So Tizrach Hashemesh let tzadikim. That's for the tzadikim. Yeah, safun Rishayim the Gehenim. And in the end of days, the Rishayim are going to go to Gehenim. The elbow Nasan your Batsun. What does that mean? Ein lecha kol tzadik. The tzadik she'ein lecha madr lefi kvodo. And all the tzadikim, they're going to have their own beautiful lodgings, residences. And Yetze Adam lepalo Yatu tzadikim lekabel scharan. Ulavadaso ade arav, b'misha hishlem abodaso ade arav. And the tzaddikim are getting all their schar. The tzaddikim are the ones who really, kept up their behavior really through the end, through their day of death. So again, not necessarily what I had in mind when I was saying Baruch Nafshi. I'm sure what I have in mind when I say Baruch Nafshi. But the point is, this is in 3 weeks. This is what we should all have in mind when we are saying Baruch Nafshi. Rabbi Lazar, Reb Shimon, is going to be a character that's going to, again, we're going to talk a lot about him for the rest of the daf and then very much in tomorrow's daf. Fascinating. Who is Reb Shimon's father? Reb Shimon and Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. So it's like we're going to learn a lot about Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's son in the days leading up to Lag BaOmer. Reb Shimon, Ashkach Lahu Bar Hagavna. He once found some federal agent, Tikatafis Gandhi. And this agent's job was he would catch Ganavim, and then these Ganavim would be hanged. That's where they would be killed. So Amar Lei, so Rebbe Lazar, Reb Shimon said to this agent, he said, Heichi Yechalis Lahu, how do you know who's a Ganav? Lav Kichiyusta Nasili, aren't they like these animals in the forest? Kol Chai Yar? Anika da Amri, a different passage, Ma'ikra Amar Lei, Yara Bamistar Ka'arye, again, Basuko, these Ganavim, they're compared to these animals. Like, how do you find these ganavim? Dimel shaklas tzadiki v'shaklas rashi. Maybe you're grabbing people that aren't ganavim. Maybe you're grabbing tzadikim and you're letting these ganavim roam around. Which, by the way, is a huge problem because they get executed. So that's not good, right? So Amar Lei, so the agent says back to Rebbe Lazar, Reb Shimon, he says, Maya Avid, Harman Demalkuhu. I'm just following orders. What do you want from me? I have a job. I have a quota. I got to find a bunch of ganavim. And if the guy's in the wrong place at the wrong time, what are you going to do? So Amar, he says, let me teach you how to find the Ganim. Go to the bar at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, at the 4th hour of whatever day. Come down. Go find the guy early afternoon who's got a drink in his hand and he's kind of falling asleep. And and talk to him, strike up a conversation. Eat Surah Merabananu. If he's a Surah Merabanan, he's the guy who's learning in yeshiva. I don't know why he's in the bar, but that's neither here nor there. So V'naim Akdume Kadam Lagirse. It's because he was probably up all night learning. And that's why he's tired. It makes sense why the guy's falling asleep, right? E Poel, who, if he's a laborer, so Kadim Ka'avid Abite. So again, probably was up early in the morning working, and that's why he's falling asleep. And if you want to tell me he's a nighttime worker, so Redude Rudid, the way Rashi seems to explain is like, it must be a small town, so you kind of know everyone. You're like, you work at night, that's why you're falling asleep right now. I don't think you work at night. I don't hear you do anything at night. So Rashi says, like, what this would be, he does some sort of quiet work at night. He does something with metal, but not like painting metal, like he creates metal something. The point is, this guy's got a good alibi for why he's working at night, and therefore he's tired during the day. But if the guy falling asleep in the bar can't explain why he's falling asleep in the early afternoon, he's not a Talmid Chacham, right? He's not someone who learns up all night. He's not someone who wakes up early to work. He's not someone who works the night shift. So he has a different type of night shift, right? So Vilo Ganvu, this guy's working the nights by being a Ganav, and that's the guy that you should grab and ultimately kill. Vitafse, get that guy. Ishma Milsabe Milka, so word got up to the king or whoever the government was that this was really good advice. And Amru Kiryana the Igarta, Lahavi Parnavka, the guy who wrote the letter, right? He should read the letter, whatever it is. The point is, Rabbi Elazar of Shimon, we should hire him to catch these ganavim. So as Yul or Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, the toughest Gandhi. Yeah, I'm not saying it would. Maybe it would work in Iran with this guy. You know, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. But either way, Rabbi Elazar of Shimon now became the new person to go find the ganavim, and he hung out in the bars, and this is where he found the people. So the toughest Gandhi Ba'azam. So Shalach Lei Rabbi Shua ben Karcha, who sounds like was a Rebbe, as we'll see more about this tomorrow. Rabbi Shua ben Karcha was a Rebbe of Rabbi Elazar of Shimon, and he said Chometz ben Yayin. He called him, he said you're like vinegar, the son of wine. Who was his father? Shimon bar Yochai. So he's saying you're Chometz ben Yayin. Probably also a play on the Chometz ben Yayin because he's hanging out in bars catching these ganavim, right? Ad Masei ata moser amos Elokeinu l'hariga. When are you going to stop being Moser on our Jewish brethren? You're giving them to the government to be killed. Shalach lei. So he responded back to Yeshua ben Karcha. He said, "Kotzim ani mechala min hakerem. I'm weeding the vineyard of these thorns. These are the ganavim that we're getting rid of." Shalach lei. And in response, Yeshua ben Karcha said, "Yavo bal hakerem yichletz kotzim." Meaning Hashem has his ways of weeding out his kerem. You don't need to do this. Either way, Yom Echad. Pagabahu Kovetz was a sort of wanderer, and he said, Karya, he said, Chometz ben Yain. He used that same phrase. He said to him, wow, you're a Chometz ben Yain. Your father was Yain, you are just Chometz. And he took offense to it. Amar, and this is again, Rabbi Elazar of Shimon said, Midachatzav Kuli Hai, Shema Minar Rashio, such a Mechutzav, you're a Rasha, and Yamar Lahu, Tefsua, and he said, get this guy, he's probably a Ganif, Tefsua, and they did get this guy, and they put him on death row. So Labasar, the Nach Daite, once he calmed down a little bit, he tried to maybe get him out of jail. Yeah, maybe this guy doesn't deserve to be in jail, but below Matzi, and he wasn't able to, and ultimately, as we'll see, the guy was killed. And Kari Aled, Rabbi Elazar of Shimon, said about this Koves, Shomer Piv, Lushono, Shomer Misaris Nafsha, meaning he ran his mouth a little bit, shouldn't have done that. He really should not have called me that name. And in the end, it cost this guy his life. So Zakuhu, they ended up hanging him. And Kom Tase the Kippah, so Rabbi Elazar of Shimon went underneath the corpse. I don't know what you call him, the gallows. Thank you. The Kabachi, and he started crying. Amrulei. So I guess the Talmidim or whoever, they said, Rebbe, Al Yera ve'enecha. Do not worry about it. Shehu ubeno, him and his son Balu Nara Marasa b'Yom Kippurim. They violated Nara Marasa on Yom Kippurim. They were awful people. So don't worry about it. They deserve it, And I think maybe Art Scroll rings down, or I saw it somewhere, that obviously the punishment for being Mizana with a Nara Marasa is not hanged. I think it's Skila. Oh, Rashi. But then they hang your corpse. So it's kind of like it's all good. And right now he's hanging. Either way, Hiniach Yado al B'nai Me'av. Rabbi Elazar of Shimon put his hand on his B'nai Me'av, his heart, something, as we'll see more tomorrow and even later today. He was a very, very, very heavy man. Rashi says he was a Baal Basar Haya Ma'o. He was a very heavy man. He put his hand on his B'nai Me'av, and he Amar, and he said, Sisu B'nai Me'ai, Sisu, rejoice. Umas steikos shalachem kach. If even our steikos, I wasn't even so sure that this guy really deserved it, and really he did deserve it. But then for sure the people that are drinking in the taverns, right? The people that I'm positive about, for sure they deserve it. So, but muftach ani b'chem she'ein rima b'tolea shalatzes b'chem. He was basically talking to his innards, and he said, "I am positive that there will never be a time where rima b'tolea is going to, that we're not going to decompose." But the bottom line is, he really didn't have Yishuv Azaz. He really felt bad about this Koves. So Ashkiu, Sama, the Shinta, took some sort of drug, anesthetic, the Ailu Lebesa, the Shisha, and he went to the operating room, which I guess was in some sort of marble place. The Karu Lacrisi, and they made some sort of incision, and they were taking out tons and tons of his fat, and this is where Rashi really says he was a very heavy man. Who mostly the Shimsha, Tammuz va'av, and they left it out in the sun, even in the hottest times of the year, and Tammuz and Av, below Mishrachi. And as he said it shouldn't, rot. His fat did not rot. Meaning he was totally good. But the Gemara says, kind of a I don't know. I landed at 3 a.m. last night, so I don't know. It's all good. But I was in Denver. I was paying a shiva call. Either way, but the Gemara says, there's a little side point. Call tarbanami lo striach. Like what is even the point here? Fat doesn't decompose. Like what's he trying to prove? So the Gemara says call tarba lo striach, but shiruke sumki masriach. These enzymes, there was some sort of thing in his body. No, I'm not a doctor clearly, but there were things that should have been masriach and hacha afagav diika shruki usumki, and even though in his fats they had these enzymes, whatever it is, lo masriach and kari and nafshe. So he said about himself, af besari yishkon levetach. Again, even my innards, even my body, even whatever it is, everything is all good, nothing decomposed. The story will very much continue tomorrow.